I've dug myself so deep into the Apple ecosystem over the years to the point of being brainwashed into thinking this was the only right and best option. I was legit stuck in thinking that no other device, company, or brand could ever compare to what Apple has achieved. What's even worse is with how stubborn I was, I never missed a Google event or a Galaxy Impact event. I always kept up with the latest news, tests, comparisons, just to remind myself that Apple's superior. Until one day, everything just snapped. I was tired of lack of innovation over the years, things felt stagnant, stale, and I wanted a change. So I decided to bite the bullet and pick up the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. I forced myself to have an open mind, truly test it and experience it, and not just hate on every little small inconvenience. To my surprise, I enjoyed this experience so much that it convinced me to spend $2,000 on the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. To me, there are two major Android brands that I've been dying to get my hands on. The first is nothing, and the second is, of course, Google. I've held a Pixel in a store before, but I've never actually personally owned one for myself, which leaves one obvious, simple question. Can I be convinced? I was a little back and forth on what actual Pixel device that I should pick up. To me, the base Pixel felt like it just made the most sense in terms of the spec sheet. I don't know what it is. I've just always preferred the Pro models of any device lineup, never the Max or the base, right in the middle. I've never liked a phone that felt super big. I don't want to have an iPad in my hand, but I also want the Pro level features, which is why the Pro model of iPhones has always felt like the perfect option. I'll be the first to say it. Maybe I contradict myself down the line, but I believe the Pro models are better than the Pro Max models. This specific model comes in 4 different color options: Moonstone, Jade, Porcelain, and Obsidian. This specific color option is in Moonstone, and I decided to pick up the 128GB model. Let's unbox it. We have, what's another box? Ooh, okay. In the rest of the box, we just get your standard USB-C to USB cable, no charging block, which is to be expected in today's generation. This is really interesting. It says you no longer need a physical SIM card. Activate your eSIM during phone setup. If you guys remember from my switching video to the S25 Ultra, I had so much problems and issues transferring my eSIM from my iPhone to my Android, and that's because it wasn't iPhone to iPhone or Samsung to Samsung. Crossing over like that is way more of a painful process. I switched carriers, figured out the method, and now I understand how to simply set these up. Oh wow, that does feel like an iPhone. I'm a big fan. Side by side to my 16 Pro, as you can see, the rounded corners feel very, very similar in terms of touch. Something I never was a fan of on the S25 Ultra is while they do have rounded corners, they felt more squared off, especially on the Fold model as well. So whenever I'm holding them, it always felt like it was digging into the palm area of my hand, which just wasn't comfortable to me at all. I've always preferred more aggressive rounded corners, so this is something that I really enjoy and tend to lean towards. One of the main things that I just initially noticed is the pill design protruding out where the camera system is placed. With the iPhone 17 dropping in the next few weeks, this is actually something that we're gonna see Apple incorporate if the leaks are true. The pill-shaped iPhone design, so we'll be going away from this. Kind of feels like an introduction of what to expect on the new iPhone. And it's not something I completely hate. I think originally I did, but now that it's in hand, it kind of makes sense, which there's not much wobble. I mean, if you really push up, there's a little bit of wobble here, but if you compare that to something like the Z Fold, this thing wobbles more than anything. And people will say, oh, wobble doesn't matter. Wobble matters when you watch YouTube and you eat food and you're constantly looking down and the phone is just going like this. You know what I mean? Or you press to skip forward and it's like, a phone shouldn't make that sound in my opinion. So to be honest, I prefer the pill-shaped camera layout just because of the practicality aspect. Initially, I like the gloss finish. I know this will be a fingerprint magnet. It's got a nice touch to it. Buttons feel clicky. Let's go ahead and walk through this setup process. Okay, it recognizes my Pixel 10 Pro. Wi-Fi already synced over. It's now updating the Pixel. Let's go ahead and set up the fingerprint sensor. Last time I got flamed in the comments because I was doing it the Apple method. But this one is built into the screen. Lift, then touch again. Okay. How to set up Face ID on the next screen. Hold your phone up at eye level. Okay, looks good. All right, that was pretty quick. Starting from scratch takes a lot of time. We're gonna go through the express copying of the data. Pixel screenshots organize your information so it's easy to find. Yes, this is an AI feature I'm really interested in. It is now starting the copying process. This is about 24 minutes left. Let's now talk about the differences, pros, and cons from switching from Android to Apple. I will say from personal experience, the biggest things that are just hard to give up are the core ecosystem apps. And what I mean by this are FaceTime, AirDrop, iMessage, and Find My. When it comes to FaceTime, I just still can't wrap my mind around accepting a Google Meet invitation. I think once you've experienced FaceTime, you can't really go back. It's so seamless, integrated, and while Google Meet does work, it's not something I do prefer. Now, the great debate when it comes to iMessage. What's funny is Google actually talked about it in their keynote event, basically saying that we need to put this to the side, and that's a silly argument and discussion. And I do agree, Google Messages hasn't been a terrible experience. I think the reactions do need some help. I do feel like there always will be that crossover of it messing things up, like group chats, even though RCS can be turned on. If I'm an Android user filled with all iPhone users, I can completely separate and split up the group chat into like 4 different text threads. It just doesn't feel like it works well. And I personally feel like that's very intentional by Apple. I don't feel like Apple wants that to work well because they want you to stay to talking to iPhones to keep them in your system. I mean, most companies are gonna try to do that. Of course, they wanna sell their product. And of course, AirDrop. This to me is the biggest joke of a discussion, and I'll explain. There are so many better alternatives to AirDrop. If you've ever used it between a Mac, iPad, or iPhone, it's great when it's work and terrible when it doesn't. 2 alternatives that I found to be a really great option that work well with Android devices and my MacBook as well as my iPhone are Local Send and Blip. They basically are better AirDrop alternatives that not only send files faster, but work on any ecosystem or device. It's great. You should totally give it a try if you haven't already. And then finally, something I do have to side with more on Apple's side is the Find My app. And I really like how other brands are starting to incorporate Find My, like Insta360 or the Ugreen tile feature that is supposed to be a competitor to AirTag. I like how they're incorporating the feature of being able to be used with Find My. I just think it's overall a better service and app that Apple provides. However, the one thing that I'm really excited about is because this is a Google device, it's fully Google focused. I religiously use on the daily Google Docs, Google Sheets, Gmail, YouTube. They're all Google products. Even as a MacBook user, I don't really use Safari. I use Google Chrome. We're stuck at 4.2% and it says it's gonna take about 34 minutes to transfer. So we're gonna let this transfer and then come back. I actually thought this day would never come. The phone is officially set up. Obviously, this has nothing to do with the phone's performance, but why in the world did that take an hour and 10 minutes? Continuing on, let's talk about the camera. The main camera here is 50 megapixels, the ultra wide is 48 megapixels, and the telephoto is also 48 megapixels. I did actually see someone do a side-by-side test comparing the Pixel 9 and Pixel 10, and the Pixel 10 sensor was actually smaller than the 9. Granted, that is the base model, and I'm almost positive that's because they introduced the telephoto lens, so they had to almost make up for size and space, but I would almost rather have a better quality main sensor than ultra wide or telephoto. Because let's be real, the majority of us are just taking photos with the main camera sensor. Without getting too deep into it, overall, as for photos, I think the Pixel does a great job. Photos feel well balanced in terms of exposure, nothing is oversaturated, sometimes dull if the lighting conditions are just not well lit or practical. However, when you talk about video, call me biased, I truly feel like iPhone is still superior, it's still the king in terms of every quality aspect. If you're walking around in different environments, situations, lighting, it's gonna auto adjust your exposure, brighten up your face way too much, and then bring it down and try to balance it and then not correct it properly. I can't talk about camera without mentioning the new 100x zoom with the AI refinement, so let's talk about it. Short and simple, this feature is good. It's not great, but it has a lot of potential to be very good. All the times where I've seen it actually make mistakes are if the subject or whatever I'm zooming into isn't given enough detail for the AI to actually correct it or fill in what it thinks it could be. Overall, I am so impressed. When I see it make those refinements in the Photos app, I am blown away at how accurate it is for the majority of the time. Props to Google, another example of practical AI integration that's only going to get better with time. Camera Coach, is it good, bad? Let's briefly talk about it. When I first saw this announced, I thought this was completely useless. Who is going to actually use this feature? To me, I feel the majority of people know how to properly frame a shot, take a decent photo without much help needed. But then I thought to myself, imagine my grandpa had this feature. I feel like he would start to take better photos with time. It's so accurate, I find it analyzing subjects well, utilizing the rule of thirds. I'm very impressed. Do I think myself or the majority of people will actually use it? Probably not. Is it a cool feature a select group of people might find interesting? Yes. Something that isn't necessarily photo related, but really helps improve the quality of photos is how bright the Google Pixel 10 Pro gets. And I can tell you firsthand, brightness plays such an important role when it comes to framing and exposing photos and video. However, here are the cons that I'm just not a fan of. I don't know if this is just a notorious Pixel issue, but why is the camera app so stuttery and buggy and laggy? First off, the shutter effect, when I take multiple pictures at one time, it'll just freeze up and stop taking pictures altogether. Whenever I adjust pro settings, it freezes up the preview altogether. And I can't talk about the camera without mentioning the social media compression issues. Internally, I want to stay hopeful this will change and get better. It's just not and hasn't. Look, I understand it's not the device or camera sensor's fault. It's the optimization of the social media apps. But please, can this become a priority to improve? It is 2025 and there is still a noticeable difference on social media. I can always pinpoint which is an Android and which is an iPhone because the quality is just trash. That's enough of me yapping. Back to the video. Let's jump to what people care about most, and that's performance and battery. Now, this year's Google Pixel 10 Pro comes with the Tensor G5 chip, which Google claims is 34% faster than the Tensor G4, which was extremely underwhelming. Single core performance was absolutely atrocious in everyday tests. While yes, benchmarks give us a good rough idea of how a phone performs, I feel like the majority of people really don't use their phone to be taking advantage of the max performance capacity that a chipset has. Like, let's be honest, if you're calling, texting, checking emails, looking at social media, and playing Clash Royale, you're not gonna need some crazy powerful chip. This chip is also made by a different manufacturer, TSMC, so I'm hoping that the performance upgrades live up to what Google claims and says. I will admit it's smooth, the haptics feel really nice, the software isn't buggy, it's pretty quick with everything. Feels like a well-optimized device. As for battery, Google claims it has 4,800 milliamp hours, which is pretty solid. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a silicon carbon battery, which I was really hoping for. But something that I was so excited and happy that they actually copied Apple on is MagSafe. This is something I've been waiting for more Android devices to incorporate, which is Qi 2 charging. They also mentioned that it does work with MagSafe accessories, which is perfect. I rarely use a cord to actually charge my device. I'm always using MagSafe wireless chargers. It's such a convenience. If you carry a wallet, you have accessories for it, you'll be happy to know that this is compatible with it. And the case is as well that Pixel cells are compatible with that, which is so nice to have. Props to Google on this one. I'm glad they copied, and I hope that more brands follow in their footsteps. What I believe Google truly shines in is AI incorporation. AI is such a buzzword, and while it's great, I feel like it's overused and at times not as good as brands portray it to be. One of the new features that really caught my attention was Magic Queue. If you've ever been on your iPhone and signed into anything like your bank account and it asks for a two-factor authentication code, you get the text and then it pops up and you can just kind of paste it right into there. Think of that, but 10 times better. That's what Google just did. Then of course you have things such as Circle to Search, which I absolutely love. Some of my favorite things are how Gemini can reference screenshots and photos. It's so helpful. Miles ahead of Siri. It's embarrassing how bad Siri is compared to anything, especially Gemini. Not to mention, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I prefer Android Auto over Apple CarPlay. This is something that I feel not too many people talk about. I just feel the Android Auto UI is so much cleaner and not as cluttered. I will say, as the phone is installing apps, it does get very physically hot, which is normal, but I have heard of people complaining about thermal temperatures. So during my daily use, I'm really excited to see how that is actually affected. Is that an issue or is that not? To many, this device feels underwhelming. There wasn't much change from the Pixel 9, but I don't think that was Google's focus with this event. I think their focus was to target people like me to do what I just did, which is buy this device for the first time. The event felt like they were just trying to persuade Apple users to just come over. It wasn't like they were trying to impress their existing customers. I think they already know they make a decent device that people buy. I think their biggest issue is trying to get people from Apple to try something new. That's literally what it felt like. Let's be real, if anything, the cameras got worse on the Pixel 10 compared to the 9. The Tensor chips have never been known to have outstanding performance. Nothing on this device screams innovation, excitement, or something that everyone and their mom would be like, I need this phone right now. I might still be slightly a brainwashed Apple fanboy, but I will say something I feel Apple has always done is, even though their events feel repetitive and the changes feel non-existent sometimes, they still somehow build a ridiculous amount of hype about an up-and-coming device, sell like crazy, and keep people in their ecosystem. Curious what you think in the comments, but I feel like if you ask somebody, oh, why do you like your Android? They give you an insane paragraph of their reasonings. But when you tell someone, well, why do you stick with Apple? They'd be like, well, it works well and it's all I know. Whenever people come to me and they're like, dude, what phone do you recommend? What phone should I get? First, it comes down to your preference. Second, there's a phone for everyone. And third, you should try out all your options before you stubbornly set on one specific thing. There really isn't a point to change it if you're truly content, but if you are upset with where you're at, explore your options. There is nothing wrong with that. There are folds, flips, and flagship models out there for a reason. That said, my initial thoughts are, I'm not impressed, but I'm also not disappointed. I am excited to put this through my everyday test, optimize it, organize my apps, get everything working the way it should. But again, I feel like I also can't say too much on it because I haven't had a crazy amount of real world experience. That said, I hope you guys went on to enjoy this video, and let me know, did you pick up any of the new Pixel 10 devices? If so, which one are you impressed, excited, disappointed, curious, all your thoughts and emotions? Let me know. Subscribe and like the video as it really does help me out, and I will catch you guys in the next one.